Imagine standing in the darkness of a cave holding a torch. The flame flickers against walls carved by time, revealing scattered bones, human bones. Some of them bear cuts, blows, even fractures that could only have come from another human hand. Suddenly, history feels less like a distant past and more like a mirror. Because what you're looking at isn't just an extinct species. It's the first humans who walked the thin line between survival and cruelty, compassion and violence. And their story is also ours. Picture a world 700,000 years ago. The air is heavy with the scent of wet earth and smoke. The sky often clouded with ash from distant volcanic eruptions, and vast herds of animals roam the plains. Mammoths, bison, and giant deer thunder across the land, while predators like lions and saber-tooths wait in the shadows. This is the world of Homo Heidelbergensis. They were not quite like us, but not fully like the primitive humans that came before them either. They stood tall, sometimes over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, muscular, and built for endurance. Their brains were larger than those of their ancestors, approaching the size of modern humans. To look into their eyes would have been unsettling. You'd see something more than an animal's gaze, but not quite the familiarity of our own reflection. Archaeological evidence tells us they lived across Africa, Europe, and Asia. They were wanderers of a dangerous world, moving wherever food and safety could be found. Their lives were a constant balance between predator and prey, hunter and hunted. But what truly set them apart was their adaptability. They were not just surviving, they were shaping the world around them. They crafted spears from wood, sharpened stones with skill, and learned to use fire as both a weapon and a shield. These were not mere instincts at play. These were choices, strategies, the first steps toward what we would one day call human culture. Yet survival came at a cost. Each decision, whether to hunt, to fight, or to move, was a gamble with life and death. And in this gamble, Homo Heidelbergensis walked the razor's edge between beast and human. To understand Homo Heidelbergensis, you have to imagine the rhythm of their days. Every sunrise was both an opportunity and a threat. Food was never guaranteed, and danger was everywhere. When they hunted, it wasn't a simple matter of throwing a spear. These hunts were long, exhausting pursuits, requiring coordination and strength. At Schöningen in Germany, archaeologists uncovered wooden spears more than 300,000 years old, perfectly balanced, crafted for throwing with deadly precision. These were not clumsy sticks, they were weapons designed by intelligent hands. Picture the scene: a group of hunters creeping across the grassland, spears gripped tight, eyes fixed on a massive horse grazing ahead. With a sudden burst, they charge. Shouts echo, spears fly, the ground trembles beneath the animal's frantic hooves. Moments later, silence, and a kill that could feed the entire group. But every victory carried risk. A wounded prey could turn violent. A lion or hyena could steal the carcass. Even a simple misstep might mean a broken limb. And in that world, an injury was often a death sentence. And just as they hunted, Homo Heidelbergensis was hunted too. Big cats, wolves, even other human groups posed a constant danger. Survival wasn't just about strength. It was about trust. These early humans relied on one another, watching each other's backs, protecting children, carrying the weak. That fragile thread of cooperation was their lifeline. Without it, they wouldn't last a week. With it, they built the foundation for something greater, the beginnings of society. In the silence of the grasslands, around the glow of firelight, they were no longer just animals trying to survive. They were communities learning, step by step, what it meant to be human. When we think of early humans, it's easy to imagine only brute force, hunters with spears, muscles against beasts. But Homo Heidelbergensis shows us something more complicated. Among their fossil remains, archaeologists have found signs that some individuals lived with serious injuries or deformities. One skeleton from Spain suggests the person had suffered from a lifelong disability, yet survived into adulthood. That survival meant someone cared for them, shared food, protected them, kept them alive when nature alone would not have. This is no small detail. It means compassion, however fragile, existed long before civilization. It was not instinct, it was choice. And in that choice, humanity was beginning to take form. But these bonds were delicate. The same group that offered care could also erupt into violence. At the famous site of Cima de los Huesos, the pit of bones, a skull was discovered with 2 deliberate fractures. The blows were not from an accident or an animal. They came from another human hand. It is a chilling reminder that while they could protect one another, they could also turn against their own. Love and loyalty coexisted with anger and betrayal, just as they do today. So Homo Heidelbergensis lived in a paradox, a species learning to nurture while also learning to kill. They carried fire not only in their hands but in their hearts, warming, illuminating, destroying. Their world was raw, uncertain, and dangerous, but it was also alive with the first sparks of what we now call humanity. They were no longer just surviving. They were beginning to live as people, and this duality between kindness and cruelty would define the human story from the very beginning. If Homo Heidelbergensis had one advantage that set them apart, it was their mastery of tools. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans had chipped stone into sharp edges, but these people elevated it into an art of survival. At sites across Europe and Africa, archaeologists have uncovered hand axes so perfectly shaped they look more like crafted weapons than crude tools. Long, symmetrical, sharp-edged, these weren't random rocks. They were planned, measured, and refined. Each one tells the story of patience and intelligence, but perhaps their greatest breakthrough was fire. Not just discovering it, many species stumbled upon flames after a lightning strike, but learning how to control it. Charred bones and burnt wood found at their camp suggest fire wasn't just a chance occurrence. It was theirs. Imagine the scene. A cold night settles over the forest. The group huddles close, sparks rising into the dark. Fire keeps predators at bay, cooks meat into safer, richer meals, and offers a circle of light in a world otherwise consumed by shadows. Fire wasn't just warmth. It was power. It transformed the night from a place of terror into a gathering ground. Around the flames they could plan hunts, share food, and perhaps even tell the earliest forms of stories, gestures, sounds, the first steps toward language. But fire also marked a shift in the balance of nature. These humans weren't just surviving within their environment, they were beginning to dominate it. They could hunt more efficiently, spread into harsher climates, and defend themselves better than ever before. For the first time, humans weren't just shaped by the world, they were shaping the world around them. For all their skill and cooperation, the story of Homo Heidelbergensis is also written in blood. The bones they left behind don't just tell us how they lived, they tell us how they fought, and sometimes how they killed. At Cima de los Huesos in Spain, deep in a pit containing the remains of more than 24 individuals, one skull stands out, cranium 17. It bears 2 nearly identical fractures, blunt, deliberate blows delivered with deadly precision. This was no accident, it was murder. Elsewhere, in places like Bodo in Ethiopia and Kabwe in Zambia, skulls show similar trauma, cut marks, fractures, evidence of repeated violence. And at times, bones reveal something even darker, traces of cannibalism. Cut marks on human remains suggest some groups may have butchered their own kind. Whether for survival, ritual, or punishment, we cannot know. It's unsettling to imagine. But it forces us to confront a truth. Violence is as old as humanity itself. Cooperation kept these groups alive, but conflict may have been just as common. Disputes over food, territory, or leadership could quickly erupt into bloodshed. And yet, these acts weren't random chaos. The repeated patterns suggest something more structured, perhaps the beginnings of rules, punishments, even justice. A community deciding what was acceptable and what was not. This is where the paradox of Homo Heidelbergensis comes alive. They could gather around the fire, share food, protect the weak, then in the next breath, turn their weapons on one another. The same hands that crafted spears to bring down a horse could also strike down a neighbor. In their world, the line between survival and violence was impossibly thin. Beyond bones and tools, there's another question that fascinates scientists. Could Homo Heidelbergensis speak? We'll never recover a recording of their voices, but the clues hidden in their anatomy suggest something remarkable. The base of their skulls shows space for a vocal tract capable of producing a range of sounds. Their thumbs were agile enough to craft precise tools, meaning their brains could handle fine motor skills. And their cranial capacity, between 1,200 and 1,300 cubic centimeters, strikingly close to our own. Put these pieces together, and it's hard not to imagine them communicating, warning cries during a hunt, gestures paired with grunts, maybe even primitive words, enough to coordinate, to teach, to share, enough to be more than instinct. And if they could speak, even in the simplest form, then something profound was happening. The dawn of culture. Language is more than survival. It's memory. A way to pass down knowledge, to share ideas that outlive a single moment. Around the fire, a parent showing a child how to carve a spear could use sound as a bridge between generations. That bridge would grow wider with each passing century until it became the river we now swim in. Storytelling, myth, history. But their culture may have stretched even further. At Cima de los Huesos, the placement of bodies deep inside a cavern hints at something intentional. Was it practical disposal of the dead, or the first glimmer of ritual? If so, then Homo Heidelbergensis wasn't just surviving. They were beginning to wrestle with questions of life, death, and meaning. In their voices, however rough, however raw, we hear the earliest echoes of what it means to be human. By the time Homo Heidelbergensis spread across Africa, Europe, and Asia, they had already proven themselves as survivors. They hunted massive animals, braved shifting climates, and adapted to landscapes from open savannas to frozen forests. But their greatest legacy wasn't their strength. It was what came after them. From this species, 3 great human lineages emerged. In Europe, they gave rise to the Neanderthals, stocky, powerful, masters of cold survival. In Asia, their descendants became the mysterious Denisovans, known today mostly through fragments of bone and strands of DNA. And in Africa, they were the ancestors of Homo sapiens, us. In other words, Homo Heidelbergensis wasn't an evolutionary dead end. They were the bridge, the crucial link in a chain that stretched into the present day. But being at the crossroads came with a price. The world was changing. Ice ages advanced and retreated, reshaping the land and the animals they depended on. Populations grew, territories overlapped, and competition, both with predators and with other human groups, intensified. Slowly, their children, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans began to take over. Each was better suited to a specific environment, more specialized, more efficient. Homo Heidelbergensis found themselves squeezed between their own descendants. It wasn't a sudden extinction. There was no single disaster that erased them. Instead, it was a fading, a long retreat into the shadows as newer species carried their legacy forward. And yet, even in disappearance, they never truly vanished. Their DNA whispers inside us still, shaping our bodies, our immune systems, even the color of our skin. Every heartbeat today carries a trace of them. And through us, Homo Heidelbergensis still walks the earth. If you've ever wondered how much of the ancient world still lives within you, the answer might surprise you. Modern science has revealed that the DNA of extinct humans still flows through our veins. Non-African populations carry about 1 to 3% Neanderthal DNA. People in Oceania may have up to 4%. Denisovan DNA. These genes aren't just historical relics, they actively shape us. Some strengthen our immune systems. Others help us adapt to colder climates or process oxygen more efficiently. This inheritance is a direct line back to Homo Heidelbergensis. They were the common ancestors, the genetic fountain from which these later species branched. Which means when you look in the mirror, a fragment of them is looking back. But their legacy isn't only biological, it's cultural. The tools they perfected became the foundation of future technologies. Their control of fire reshaped human diets, giving us the calories to fuel larger brains. Their cooperation laid the groundwork for societies, families, and eventually civilizations. Even their contradictions, the mix of compassion and cruelty, echo through us. Just as they once cared for the weak yet struck down their own, we too live in that tension. Our capacity for empathy exists side by side with the capacity for violence. This duality may be their greatest gift and their greatest warning. To be human is to hold both light and shadow within us. So when we talk about legacy, It's not just about bones in a museum or genes in a cell. It's about the blueprint of who we are, the instincts, choices, and emotions that began with them and continue in us. They are not gone. They are written into the deepest code of our being. In the end, the story of Homo Heidelbergensis is not about extinction. It's about transformation. They did not simply vanish. They became the foundation of everything that followed. Think about it. Every act of kindness, every spark of conflict, every word spoken today carries echoes of their first attempts at compassion, their first outbreaks of violence, their first efforts at communication. They were the threshold species, the ones who stood halfway between animal instinct and human consciousness. Their disappearance was slow, a fading into the background as Neanderthals, Denisovans, and modern humans took their place. But if we listen closely, we can still hear them. In the crack of a fire, in the rhythm of footsteps during a hunt, in the quiet moment when one human chooses to help another, we're hearing a voice first spoken hundreds of thousands of years ago. Maybe that's their true legacy. Not just the DNA we carry, but the mirror they hold up to us. They remind us that humanity has always been a paradox. We are creatures capable of care and cruelty, of love and betrayal. That duality isn't new, it's ancient. And perhaps in that contradiction lies the answer to what it really means to be human. So the next time you look at your hands, imagine them gripping a wooden spear, a torch blazing in the dark. Imagine living in a world where every day balanced between survival and meaning. That was their world. And without them, we would not be here. Homo Heidelbergensis may have walked into the shadows of history, but their footprints still lead directly to us. So what do we take away from the story of Homo Heidelbergensis? That being human was never simple. From the very beginning, we've carried a dual legacy, capable of protecting one another, yet also of inflicting harm. We inherited their fire, their tools, their resilience, but we also inherited their contradictions. They were the bridge between animal and human, between survival and meaning. Without them, there would be no Neanderthals, no Denisovans, no Homo sapiens. And maybe the most haunting truth is this: their story isn't finished. It lives in our DNA, in our instincts, in our choices every single day. In compassion and cruelty, in the urge to survive and the yearning to create, we are still walking their path. So I'll leave you with a question. If Homo Heidelbergensis could see us now, would they recognize us as their children? Or would they see strangers who forgot where we came from? If that thought made you pause, even for a moment, then you've just felt their shadow moving through history. If you want to keep exploring these forgotten chapters of our story, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment below. Do you think our compassion outweighs our cruelty? Or is it the other way around? And if you'd like to go deeper into the mysteries of humanity's past, check out the next episode. It's waiting for you right here. Because the past isn't gone. It's alive, hidden in our bones, whispering in the dark.